Hello, everyone, and welcome to this legal compliance webinar series that our law firm Kaizen Synergy is running. My name is Nihal Samara. I'm the General Counsel and Legal Director of the law firm Kaizen Synergy, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's session. Today's session focuses on the COVIDSafe legal compliance dashboard. We have been running these sessions for the past number of months now, actually dating back to February. So with that, we are actually opening up the COVIDSafe legal compliance dashboard for agencies right around the country to use. Over the last number of months, we have opened this up to some 4,000 odd agencies. And today's session is to show you how this works, what some of the functions are, and also how it can simply make your life a lot easier as well. And we will be using case studies around this too. As always, we'd like to pay our respects to the elders past and present upon the lands on which we all meet. While this session is being run by webinar and recorded, we do pay our respects to the traditional owners accordingly. Now, today's agenda, we are going to cover off a number of key areas. These include the COVIDSafe plan, how this works, where it comes from, what the setup is. I do also acknowledge we've had a question from Peter across in WA who's asked around, which is relevant right here very early on, is whether the state that you're in, whether this will change some of the information that you will see or across any of these slides. Essentially, the Gemba 360 COVIDSafe legal compliance dashboard is set up per agency. And with that, information that you get is relevant to your specific agency and also where you're based. And I'll actually show you how to set this up for yourselves as well, and also how to update areas that we call the organization profile. And all of this will make sense once we jump in a little bit further to today's session. We're also going to look at the COVID pandemic forms and what are the forms that are actually being used by agencies to cover their staff, volunteers, and contractors. We're also going to talk about QR codes as well too, and attendance registers. There has been a lot of interest from different state governments at the moment. It seems to be a bit of a buzz word or word of interest that people are seeing, and there is a bit of confusion on how they actually work and where the data and information goes to. And we will actually walk you through this as well too, and this will be done live for you to be able to see as well. With that, we are also going to be looking at the HR registers as well. What is the information, how to store that, how to set that up, what are some of the alerts that you need to look at, as well as other things like policy and contract registers that your agency also needs to cover too. So we will be covering all of these off. You will get access to the resources and information that we use. So in short, to use one of the jumping straight in, what you'll find is that on your dashboard, once you log in, and I'll keep coming back to this, this is from Women's Housing Limited, just to show you how this works. You'll find that you'll have access to a COVIDSafe plan right in the middle, which you can see in the disaster module section. You'll also be able to access policies and template information and keep your policies and contracts in the Gemba Docs area. You'll be able to look at things like the Gemba College as well too, which covers off some of the courses and all of the past webinar and information. And also the pandemic forms, which are listed on the left-hand side, as well as risk and HR registers that you can also see as well. So we will be covering all of this off for you today. And it really gives you a single point and source of truth to be able to access. And we'll show you how to also set this up. So let's have a look at reasons for attending the webinar and what you should get out of it. Now, COVID-19 will be with us for some time. As we return to work and businesses reopen, we need to have robust compliance systems and policies and processes in place to support this. These need to be enough to keep staff and your people safe, but also not onerous or confusing. And we need to see where that line actually is. So by attending this legal compliance webinar today, you will get a timely collection of resources, including these slides, that provide an overview and information that should be helpful to support your agency, as well as the staff, volunteers, and clients that you provide services to. We'll also show you what other COVID-safe systems other agencies are also using and how this is actually working in order to support the works that you use as well too. So this is not just a legal compliance session either. We'll cover off two different case examples of what has worked and what continues to work for agencies as we move through this. Now, the dashboard that we have given yourselves access to is the legal compliance system that our law firm has set up. And this was something that we've been running for about 10 years now at least. Now, as the pandemic has come, what we found is that the need to keep up with legislative updates that affect your agency, it's not everything. So for example, if you're not in the business of fishing or fisheries, then you wouldn't or you shouldn't get updates that relate to fishing. Equally, if you're not in the mining industry, why would you get updates around mining? So again, some of the legal updates, and I'll show you how these work, are related to what you actually see on your dashboard as well, and how your profile can drive this as well. Now, the system that we have is 100% mobile, which means that you can access it not only from your desktop, but also from any mobile device. And I'll actually show you live how that actually works. So this webinar is being recorded like all of our other webinars that we have run on key topics, all the way up to the question and answer part of the session. You can ask questions in the chat group as well, and we will come to you as well throughout the session. The webinars are also published on our Gemba 360 YouTube channel, and also the knowledge base with all of our weekly circulars are also published on our website. Now you can access that by going to the Kaizen Synergy website. If you click on the kaizensynergy.com, it'll bring up the picture here. Yes, that's me on the website as well too. And if you go to the COVID-19 knowledge base, and you can access this general information, which is our past webinars that you can view and see. Equally, if you wanted to access the past webinars, they're all made publicly available on the YouTube channel, which is gemba360.com. And you can access that by going to YouTube and typing in Gemba360, and you'll see literally all of the past videos, all the way dating back to February, on just about every possible COVID legal compliance topic that you'd want to see on here as well too. So that is certainly another resource that is also available for you to view as well. If you do have any questions throughout the session or even after today's webinar, and if you are watching this webinar via recording and you do have questions, then by all means, please contact us on one of the numbers listed below. That also includes my direct mobile number for you to access, which is also available via our YouTube, via all of the webinars that we have run for yourselves as well since February. So it is a resource that are there. So let's have a look at the webinar and look at the key areas around the COVID-safe legal compliance areas, and we will cover off certain states and requirements for yourselves. Now, looking back, one of the areas that the Commonwealth has been very clear on across the three-step framework for a COVID-safe Australia as businesses reopen is to have workplaces develop their own COVID-safe plans throughout each of the steps. And what does that actually look like? So when we look at what a COVID-safe plan needs to look at, we need to look at also the legal compliance obligations around this. Now, there is that much information on it. One of the key parts of the compliance plan, or the COVIDSafe compliance plan, was to be able to facilitate contact tracing. Now, I will show you just how these work as well from the QR codes, and I'll just discuss this really early on because it is such a key topic that agencies are asking for. And I'll show you actually two different versions of how this works. And you guys can do this with me as well. So first of all, going back to February, one of the things that agencies have been doing as part of their making sure that workplaces are kept safe is to have an event or workplace attendance register. And you can see that in the top left-hand corner of the screen. Again, we'll send these resources around for you today. Now, with that, generally what people have had to do is fill out, for example, a site where you're based, and then, or an event, and people that would be attending would fill out the date, the time, the name, their date in, date out, what they're doing, and that would then be recorded. And you would have pens or pencils kept there, PPE equipment, and people would clean them, and then the next person would come in and fill that out. And that has been good for and worked quite well. What we've seen is a push by states to say, look, we need state and territory governments to move to a QR code-based area. And what this is essentially an electronic type of form. Now, how this works is that, and I'll show you this live for you. So with it, how this works is like this. And I'm actually going to bring up my own mobile device to show you how this works and what is actually involved in doing this. And you yourselves can actually set this up and using the Gemba platform, which we'll show you. Okay, so what we have now in front of you, and it'll pop up in a second, there it is there, is my live mobile phone. And because of what's going on at the moment, you can see I've had 146 missed calls and a few of my other apps that I've got on here now as well. Now, all that I need to do is go to the camera button. And how this works is that you basically hold it up to your QR code. And if you yourselves are wanting to do this, you can do this use your own phone. It brings up a link that I then have. Now, I didn't take a photo, I just held it up. And what it brings up is a contact tracing form. And this is part of the COVIDSafe legal compliance areas that you need to follow. Now, what our law firm has done is use this as a template for many agencies to use. You'll find that right at the top, if I can make this bigger, here we are here. I'll just make my screen slightly bigger for yourselves to see. It gives it's just an ABCD group that I've created as our demo site. It has what we call the contact tracing form. And it's just said at the top, by filling out this form, I give my consent to this agency running in this case, community event, to use this information to manage the event and keep it COVID safe. This includes disclosing it to government departments in order for any COVID safe obligations they need to meet. So we've included a consent and privacy statement right at the top to tell people how the information is then being used. Now, anyone that's coming in, I can then fill out the details. So let's say, and yourselves can try this, scan the QR code for those of you that are happy to do this. Keep it anonymous if you like. You can create any person. So let me say, in this case, I'm just going to actually use, let's say, Fred Flintstone. And my phone number, I'm going to put in as my live phone number as well too. Here it is here. Now what it has is a list of screening questions. These screening questions identifies what the Commonwealth has actually been used and identified as symptomatic tracing. From here, I can click yes or no around it. So have I traveled overseas? Have I been in close contact with anyone that's COVID-19? Are you currently or have you experienced any of these symptoms? Cough, fever, sore, fatigue, etc. Vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath. Now I'm going to click no. Now, if I have experienced any of this, I've got a yes question. And I've also got the phone number for our reception. But you can insert your own reception number, phone number in here. So if you obviously had a different number, you can insert it in there. Now, reason for attending the site. I'm just going to say webinar meeting, okay? But you can see that this allows us to do it. Now, is anyone else attending with you? In this case, I'm going to say no. And what I'm going to do is now submit this form. Now, by submitting this form, what then comes up is this screen here. And I have my terms of service, privacy policy, etc. all down the bottom, but it then says, thank you for helping make this a COVID-safe workplace or event and the likes. Now that information, once that information is submitted, where does it in fact go? Now for yourselves, the issue that we've got here is this, where we can then go into the site, and I'll show you how this works. So if we go into and log in to your Gemba 360 site, and you can click on there and you'll get the login details for that as well. And with it, what we're able to then view is the responses that we have got. Now with it, if I just click on this part here, then what you can see is that we've had a number of people that have actually already logged in, and it comes up around this. So thank you for doing that. Now within it, it gives us the exact information. You can then see exactly the details that we have listed here, but it also, more importantly, gives me this information of who's done what and when. Now, there are a few people that have put in full names and details around this. And with it, I can see, and I shout out to David and Beth, who I'm not going to give surnames to, but have also pulled out responses around each of these as well. And with it, if I wanted to have a look at this as well, I'll bring this up with that person's last part of their details around it. So if I click on here, you can see that what we've got here is a list of what has been answered without showing mobile numbers or other names as well. So this is a live site of what you're actually seeing. It means then that what we can do, also just going back to this as well, is also then drill down into specific details of what we need to see and when. It also means that yourselves can actually then look at individual information and also get alerts of who's seeing what information and when you're actually seeing it, and who and what alerts you're actually getting from that. So it's actually a very quick way of being able to monitor things across a number of different sites. Now, what we need to then look at from here when we go back to our session around this is essentially what happens from here is that if there are people that are elderly, and we've had a lot of queries coming from agencies that are saying, look, we run a museum, or we can't see our, we have a lot of elderly staff or people that don't have smartphones, what do we do? Well, then in that case, still keeping an attendance register at the site is an exception and allows you to collect that details of how you actually do that. Now, John's actually asked a really good question, which is, how do you separate each organization on one barcode? Well, the fact is, John, that what we have is each Gemba group and each agency has its own set of barcodes. So if you run multiple sites, each site has its own barcode that you would then get. And I'll show you on Gemba where you can actually pull those barcodes from. So quite simply, when you set up your organization profile, you'll get a list of sites that you will have. Some agencies have included vehicles as well too, and I'll come to that as well too. But this allows you to, in fact, manage both your sites or all your sites, as well as all of your vehicles as well. So it's a really good question, John, on how that is done. Now, let me show you the next part. So one of the questions that we've then had was how does this work for agencies that are then registered and using state government type of QR codes as well. Now, this is one, again, it is a live one around this, and it's one that our support desk set up for me around this. Now, with this is different. So this is what the Victorian state government, but other state governments have done a similar process. Now, if we go back, and I'll just drag my mobile phone back on here, and we will jump into the GEMBA site around this, but it's interesting on questions that agencies are asking us. So we've gone in and we've registered with this. Now, I want to draw your attention to a couple of things on this. When we bring up the camera again, and I'll do this live for you, it scans the code. But this time what it actually asks me to do, instead of taking me directly to a form, I have to actually download, firstly, the state government's app. And for many agencies, this is actually causing them some troubles because they're saying, how do we then do that if we don't have access to if we have to actually download an app onto our phone now? So in this case, I'm going to do this for you to walk you through this. I've then had to download the app around this. If I update it and I download it again, and this is what is involved. And then I go to open, and here it is here. And now I've got to go back and do what they call the quick check-in. So in this case, I click on this button here, and then I have to take a photo of that. And in this case, I'm going to add my name in and then my phone number. Now, why I am showing you this, and I'm checking into this location. Okay, and here it is all done in real live time. And in this case, I'm going to say, don't save my details. Now, with this, and some of the concerns that we have raised with agencies is, where does that information go? As an agency, if I then want to make sure, and let me just bring this back, if I wanted to make sure that, and I'll just slide this off, if I wanted to make sure that, well, I've got now my scanned QR code, but there's nothing for me to be notified about it. I don't have register of information about who has actually checked in. That's a really good, and a picking up question is, and who is the data shared with, Kath, as well too. So essentially what we understand this to work as, where this comes into it, is that your agency doesn't get access back. So if you have contractors that are coming in, or other staff or other personnel, you don't know who has actually accessed this site. If they are COVID positive, they could essentially walk straight into your site. There's nothing to prevent them from doing that. There's no checks and balances. There's no alerts coming out. And it's good because it'll serve the purpose of contact tracing for the state government to be able to do this. But I guess our concerns around this is that essentially all you're doing is putting in the person's name, their contact number, and nothing else is actually either being recorded. There's no assessment being done. There's no data being fed back to your agency to be able to monitor this. And equally, there's no alerts coming back. And so if you need to access or check information or ensuring your place's work health and safety legal obligations are being met, then what you're essentially, I'm going to say for a better word, relying on the Victorian contact tracers to support that process. And obviously with the reasoning coming back from things like the hotel quarantine, it does raise some questions on this. Now, again, doing that and how we've set this up with agencies, and we thank Women's Housing for allowing us to show this, is that essentially all you need to do is select the link on your phone. It takes you directly in to the form to update, and you complete it. It asks you the assessment questions very briefly, and it flows in around it. And from here, you're able to get the notifications if someone is COVID positive, which you can see here, or at least they've got a contact number for your reception if that's the way in which you manage it as well. And it's a lot more efficient way of managing your system. Now, with this, agencies like Women's Housing have actually rolled this out to all of their sites across that they manage. And we're also looking at setting these up for vehicles as well too. So that way, if they do have any company vehicles, when they get in, they can actually scan and they're away directly from their phone. There is no need to download apps around this. Excuse me, you can see my screensaver of my son getting swimming prizes. But again, what you can see here is the directly in, and your agency can access this data sets from the system directly around this. And it is no, I'm going to say, essentially mucking around and only getting information coming through on certain areas. And from there, you're able to use your dashboard to then go in and audit the responses and forms and information that you also want to see as well. Now, with this, where does this go from here? Well, with the legal compliance obligations that your agency needs to meet, and we're going to move through this, there are a range of changing legal compliance obligations. These come from the Commonwealth government, state governments, whether you're in WA, Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, wherever, there are different rules that apply to different states as well. There are also safe work checklists that you have, which I'll cover briefly, as well as Commonwealth directives and aged care pandemic plans that are covered, or state plans as well. Now, what we have done essentially is bring that all together into your COVIDSafe plans. And so what you'll find on your Gemba dashboard is all of these tools being brought together. So that way you're not having to try and grab one bit of information from one part and then the other. The same thing goes with all of your checklist tools, whether it is around physical distancing, health and hygiene, and cleaning. Again, workplace registers serve a particular purpose, but it's important to have that as a key area for your contact tracing. And again, joining it all together, essentially you've got your attendance registers, whether you have the QR codes or physical attendance registers, as well as the different pandemic forms that you have. And again, your staff are able to access it. What's important here from a work health and safety legal compliance obligations to meet your work health and safety requirements, as well as your HR requirements, is to ensure that your agency has access and timely access to relevant compliance data sets. How can you possibly deal with a breach or a potential risk with COVIDSafe if you don't have that information directly at hand? And to wait more than 24 hours can actually set you back a significant period of time. We've seen it in hotspot areas in Victoria specifically, where one driver potentially caused problems with literally thousands of people only within the space of about 24 hours. So it is something that we need to manage across this. Now, two agencies that we can see are doing well across this and have agreed to share some of their learnings is Rumballara Aboriginal Cooperative, and we thank Laurie Seville around that for giving us permission to share some of the learnings that have come out of things, especially around the policy areas. And Women's Housing Limited, Judy Line, the Chief Executive Officer there, and also Lena Tompkinson, who's the Compliance and Executive Assistant Officer, who set up some of the legal compliance areas and COVIDSafe works as well. So joining the dots together for you, and to keep things simple in terms of what you need. Essentially, since February, we've set up things like the COVID daily assessment forms that agencies have been using. working from home forms, workstation reviews, cleaning registers. And I'll show you the calendar of tools to use, as well as how to put this into place as well. You'll get access to things like the QR codes for all of your sites as well. And again, picking up Kath's question around who is the data shared with. The data isn't shared with anybody, Kath, around this particular part of it. It is open for your agency to use and your agency alone. Picking up John's question on how do you separate each organization with one barcode, quite simply, we have different barcodes for different sites, and you can also apply this to different vehicles as well. And I'll show you where we go for that. Now, in summary, when you log into your dashboard, your COVIDSafe legal compliance dashboard, what you'll find is a series of buttons that you can access around this. The plan is found in the disaster area. You'll have access to policies. You've got your pandemic forms, your HR registers, risk registers, and staff training. Now, all of this meets the Commonwealth guidelines for running your COVID workplace COVID safe plans. So let's jump in and have a look at this in terms of how it works. Now, for this, you can log in. You will get the link, which will take you to a login blue button, and your username will be your email address. We've set this up for agencies in the Gemba system already that our law firm supports, and you get a sandbox access to play around with all of these tools as well. So with it, once you get your username, which will be your email address, you can use that, and your password. That'll log you in to your own dashboard. Now, quite simply with this, you'll see that you've got your COVID tools on the left-hand side, and I'll show you what those look like. You've got your COVIDSafe plan, and for those based in WA, and I know we had a question around this from Peter, the individual COVIDSafe plans for your agency will be based on where you are based, what services you deliver, and what industry you are based in. That'll give you the Commonwealth directives, and we'll show you what those look like, as well as the specific legal areas. Now, one of the areas to actually set up first is what we call the organization profile. With that, and I'll just click on that to show you what that looks like. And I'm doing all of this from the front end of the system, so you all have the power to, in fact, do this as well. What you will be asked to look at is the area, and we're more than happy to help you do this as well. It'll ask you for company details, so where your what your name of your company is, ABN, contact details, as well as what trading names you might have, so business registration names. It'll ask you for, and I'll just bring the summary details up here, what sector you're based in, what services you deliver, and I'll just bring that up here. And we've got a list of all services that are currently funded by the Commonwealth and different state governments. If there's specific services that you want to add in, please contact us and we'll do that for you. What we've also got, and you'll see this down the bottom as you work through this, is the site and local council regions. Now, to pick up John's question on how do we actually separate these out, essentially, let me add one in here. So if I was to add in our own address that we have, and I'll just bring up our details here. Here we are here. Suite 11974, Main Road, Eltham. And then it'll ask us for our council region. So I'm going to select the council region from here as well. And you yourselves can do the same when you complete yours. And here it is, Nillumbik Shire. And I simply click on add. And that will actually come up with the details that I needed to list. What this will give us is, in fact, the relevant codes or QR codes for each of the sites. And this will drive, John, to answer your question, exactly what codes you need, and you'll be able to get those directly and use those for each of the sites that you have. And so with that, that sets those up. What you can also do directly from here is that you can have unlimited number of staff. So it's not just yourself that can access this as well. So within it, if you wanted to add a new staff member, you can, let's say, I'm just going to create a new positions for this. So create a new position. And in this case, I'm going to call it compliance officer. And in this case, I'll say, look, I'm going to have this person and I'm going to call them COVIDSafe compliance officer. But you can have anyone that you like added in. Once I've added the position in, I'm going to add a new user. And in this case, I'm going to select and I'm going to create a new person called Pebbles. And I'm going to call her Pebbles Flintstone 1. Here we are, Pebbles. And I'll just create a new person. Now, yourselves can do this directly from your end. And I'm going to create our support desk email around this. And I'll just show you quickly how we do this. Now, here is the position I've created. And I can simply select save. And it's done. And it's added in. So you can actually add as many people as you want on this. And if I wanted to actually send and open this up to Pebbles, I can simply open it up and set her password. And I'm just going to make it an easy password for Pebbles to use. And I click on save. And the password has been sent and Pebbles is able to access this. Now, essentially what then comes out of this is you want to be able to screen not only staff, but also volunteers. Well, here it is. So what you can do from here is go down and open up and have a look at things like your COVID assessment forms. And here is some that we've been adding in. Now, Fiona has just asked a really important question, which we'll cover off, and we'll use this form to do it. Fiona's just asked, what happens if we operate as a virtual team and our events take place in CBD locations outside of where we are actually based? What address local councils should be added in there? Well, what you can do, and I'll actually show you this, Fiona, is that you can actually use what we have as event-based codes as well. So every time you do an event, you'll actually have access to a specific COVID QR code and attendance register for you to see. Now, within it, what you will be able to view is in the specific area of your COVID event, you'll actually be able to pull your own QR codes. And again, each event is specific to that particular code that you're in fact using. Now, let me show you what I mean by that as well. So I'll do that directly after I do this assessment form. So essentially when people log in, one of the things that has been a really powerful tool for agencies to use since February was this screening tool. They've added staff and volunteers and board members and members into their Gemba system. What they've been able to then do is go, right, we want to make sure that our staff are kept safe. Now, this was an older form that we had. And what they asked people to do is to go through either on a daily basis or a weekly basis. Now, with this, two different agencies, Rumballara Aboriginal Cooperative, have staff that work each day that actually go through and complete this type of assessment form. Now, the reason that they've done that was because of the type of services that they operate. They're also an Aboriginal community controlled organisation. They're an identified vulnerable group. They run aged care and elders services as well. So they wanted to actually make sure that staff are aware of any symptoms that they might have, and it's being done on a daily basis before they come in to work. In this case, when they save it, the date, the time, and the name of the person that's actually completing it for each staff member has been done. Similar process has also been followed by other migrant resource centres as well. Now, what happens in comparison, we've had women's housing services that have been doing it once a week because while people are working from home, they're not actually having contact directly with specific clients. So there is the flexibility for an agency to make that decision. But once you actually save this form, and I'll just do that now, well, then here it is here. I've got the date, the person's name, and the status of it as well too. And managers can actually get alerts if there's the information added in. Now, what that gives us is essentially, if I go into have a look at all forms, I can actually go back through time and view any of the information that I've got at any point in time. So if there was an outbreak or there was a suspected case that came up, what agencies have done, and this is something real that's actually happened over the last few months, is where there's a concerned case or an outbreak that's occurred, agencies have been able to go in, they've been able to search, and in this case, let me bring this up. No, Barney hasn't completed anything. What about Fred? Okay, we can see that. Was it about a site that was specific? Well, I can type in Eltham. Okay, there it is there. So you can actually look at where and use the register to very quickly in real time search your requirements. Now, picking up Fiona's question around what do we do if we have an event that's running outside our locations? Well, in your Gemba dashboard, you can go to the disaster module section, and I'll just bring that up right here. From here, I can go in and click on projects, and this gives me my COVID step 1, step 2, and step 3. Now, what you'll also find is that we've got events based, and I've just set one up here called community event. Now, if I open this, what this gives me is the specific industry plan that I need to meet for running an event. And we've covered this off in the past webinars in detail around this, but this just gives you an example of what it looks like. Now, in the document section, what we have automatically loaded is and this is just a demo one to show you how this works, the demo COVID form. Now the icon, and I can actually click on that. And when that opens, what comes up is in fact the demo, the COVID icon as well. Now, let me show you how this works. So in this case, what comes up is this here. And it's a slightly different code, and yourselves can try it, and it's just a copy of what we had before. And it brings up directly a COVID contact form for that particular event. And it works in exactly the same way. So if you are running events, what you'll find is that in your event, what I'll call event planner, you're able to then almost use the checklist to verify your event and make sure that it's COVID safe. Now, what we've included in this is to make sure that it's based on the relevant industry plan that you have. So especially in the not-for-profit sector, running events or community groups or the likes is just so critically important. It's part of core business of so many agencies. Well, this allows you to follow that process and have your QR codes ready to go and essentially in place for you to use as well. Now, how I got there was quite simply clicking on the disaster module right here, and this opens up the projects, and yourselves can open this up and then work through those. Now, what we have also got in here is the COVID plans, picking up what John and David and Kath were raising as well. And essentially what this gives us is the COVID step 1, step 2, step 3s. These are based on the individual steps that the Commonwealth is following. If you're based in WA, you might have phases instead of stages. If you're based in Queensland, you'll have stages. So essentially what you're seeing here is the Commonwealth, your local state or territory requirements, and also the safe work requirements as well. Now, in the past, I mentioned that you also need to look at and reference safe work requirements. Well, we've got those referenced for you here. So if I wanted to have a look at, well, what is the things like the good hygiene checklist that I need to look at? Well, as part of our legal updates that we run for agencies, we also supply the contacts list if these are updated by safe work. And you can see these listed under the documents section. and all of them are updated as specific updates flow through, and your agency is able to access these as well. The other parts that I wanted to cover off around this, which agencies have said to us, is, oh my goodness, their law changes so often and we need to have other checks and balances in place. And you're absolutely correct. So what we have also set up around this is the compliance calendar. Now, the compliance calendar runs your reports of what you need to do and when. It's all traffic light coded. So I can see I've got a couple of items here, a green, orange, and reds. Green means that it's on track. Orange means that it needs to be actioned, and red means that it's overdue. Now, what does this look like? Well, if I wanted to have a look at one of these, actually, let me go back for you and I'll show you how this works. So if I was to have a look at this section here, well, I can see that I need at the end of this month to review the attendance register that I've got. It meets the Public Health and Wellbeing Act requirements, and it also then means that I'm compliant with that as well. In this case, it's going to be done on the 10th of December. If it's not actioned a week before the end of the month, in this case, it'll then escalate up to Fred, the manager. So the first notification will go to Barney, and then the next one will go to Fred to action. And this will ensure that you met those requirements. Now, Monica has just asked, if the community event is held in a restaurant, do we use their QR code or use our own? And that's a really good question around that, Monica. What we've found is that you can use the restaurants around it. What we suggest is that you do ask for that information and the registrations to be kept, so that way you've got access to that information when you need it. Some of this is about sharing some of that information as well too, because if, and I'll answer this, if WorkSafe came and asked you, well, how did you make sure that that event was COVID safe? You can rely on the restaurant, but wouldn't it be good to also have access to that specific, not all of their information, but just that event that you held there? So that's where we asked them to actually do it. Now, on that, Monica, it is really straightforward to actually be able to do some of this stuff as well too. It's not a big ask whatsoever, because quite simply, if we were to look at doing it in terms of what you might have had as well too, and if I go to what we have here, and let me just bring up that registration, then essentially what you're able to in fact do is go and download the responses right here. And if I do that now, then essentially what I've got is a zip file, and you can see that on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, suddenly appearing. So it is very easy to be able to pull this information out. It's not an excessive process to follow. Now, the other parts around that, picking up Monica's question, was where do you and how do you also store that info as well? Well, you then also have on your Gemba dashboard the HR section. Now, the HR section essentially allows all of your staff, your personnel, your volunteers to in fact keep their personal contact and emergency contact information up to date, and they can update this at any stage. So you can see that for your agency, and picking up Fiona's point, that if you are working remotely as well too across many different locations and you want to be able to contact people, well, then this platform allows you to be able to do that as well. And you have essentially unlimited number of people that you can add onto this as well. Now, if I wanted to add an emergency contact person for this, let me do it here for you live around this. Okay, I'm going to add, in this case, Fred Flintstone. You can see I like cartoon characters. Relationship, I'll say, is brother-in-law as well too. Mobile home phone number or mobile number. I'm going to put the same number, which is my mobile as well too. And here you are here. So you can literally update it that quickly. There are also other information that you might want to include around this as well too, like working with children checks and police checks. And all of the qualifications can then also be listed here for people for their driver's license, police checks, working with children checks, other education that they might have, etc. So if I added in this information around, let's say, the working with children check, and I'll just add that in and I'll just put in a number, and issue date was, let's say, 1st of December, and just for demo purposes, I'm going to put in the end of the month and save that. Now that's loaded in here. Now what essentially happens is once that's loaded in, you will get an alert to say, hey, this person needs to follow these things through. And where that comes through is on your compliance calendar. And you can bring that up. And when I look at it here, essentially, okay, I've got Fred's working with children check and it's due on the 23rd. I need to access on the 31st. It's going to Fred first to action. And if it's not actioned a week before the due date, it'll fire an email to me to say, hey, this needs to be done. So you can see from a compliance point of view, you've got all of your bases covered across this. You've got your HR side, you've got your pandemic forms. The other things that you might want to have a look at is things like your document sides as well, for your policies, for your contracts, for your procedures, and even things like board reports you can load into here as well. It allows you to have a secured platform to manage all of this information across your COVIDSafe requirements as well as your other legal compliance areas. And if we have loaded in some of the policy templates for you to view, as you can see, you can use it for PDFs and also even Word documents and edit it all on here. Idea is that simply nothing ever gets missed ever. So as you're even putting in your policies registers, you've got your start date, review dates, and end dates. And on the on the review date, it'll fire off a notification, and it's not actioned a week before the end date. It'll send out a reminder and chase you down. And it's also got version control on here. So a lot of agencies are using this to run their policies, contracts, board reports, board agendas, board minutes, all that information you're able to access as well. Now, the very last thing that I did want to cover off was around your area for staff training. And this has been a big part, especially with COVID, in terms of keeping staff up to date with changes. And on that, you've got your Gemba College space, which has all the templates that you need for things like your COVID training. We've also included other things like the victims of crime areas for those of you that provide support services and domestic violence services. But again, you've got all of your previous webinars, and you can actually use this to set up your own training for your own induction for your own agency as well. And it's a complete setup for your legal compliance area. With that, you can cover off all of your COVIDSafe works. You have access to view this and run this even from this afternoon. You will get your login details around your Gemba dashboard. I'm more than happy to stay on the line and answer any questions that you might have around this. As we've said all along throughout this, there is a setup cost that you have as part of this system, as well as an annual license fee that you have. And these are all covered off as part of the system setups that we do. With that, if you do have any questions, and our recommendations is review your COVIDSafe legal compliance dashboard. You can use your dashboard to manage your community events and also your workplace as well too. If you do have any questions, by all means, please contact our law firm directly on either my mobile number, which is available on Google as well, or also directly on our 1300 number and email address listed below. With that, we will open the phone lines. More than happy to stay on the line and answer any questions that you might have. If you are watching this webinar by a recording, please contact us if you do have any questions around this, and we are more than delighted to support yourselves.